Hey guys, it's been a while since my last video, but just wanted to do a different types of investment strategies that you guys can look into, and what are some of the changes that's happened. So one of the key things that I wanted to go over is obviously the emergence of diversifying your portfolio. So not just buying the S&P 500, not just buying tech or crypto or whatever, but also diversifying into international markets as well. The international markets last year and as of this year have largely outproduced the S&P 500 performance. So it's still a good time, even with the correction still being added. SK Hynix has recently been listed on the American Stock Exchange as well to be publicly traded here in the US, so that US retail investors can also be involved with this as well. So one of the key things to really talk about here is, obviously, how do you get into them, right? So there's two different companies to look into. One's from State Street and another one's from BlackRock. But they have two different schools of thought, so I'm going to kind of break them down in this video. So if you look here, this one is called the SPDW, which is the Developed Markets Fund. So if you look at the holdings, a lot of this is going to be based primarily in financials and industrials, which industrials is mostly going to be companies like TSMC. But more specifically, the countries, right? So if you see here, 21% or 22% of it is going to be in Japan. Second best is going to be United Kingdom, Canada, and South Korea. So this is one of the things that I wanted to kind of break down is for the longest time, and actually up till earlier this year, South Korea was more considered a emerging market. Developed markets were basically these top three companies, including France, Germany, as well. Australia is actually more considered emerging markets as well, but I guess with the recent emergence with their stock market and just their overall economies becoming a lot stronger, State Street has found them to becoming a better better viewpoint of being added as a developed market. So, kind of having that school of thought. Going into iShares, they are the subsidiary of BlackRock. They have their version of the Developed Market Index Fund, where their holdings are primarily in Japan, United Kingdom, Canada, France, but no South Korea, and also nothing in Australia as well, right? So they're more considered emerging markets. There's a more clear separation of both different types of countries, I should say, to get into. And when I look for companies like Samsung under iDev, it's not going to pop up. SK Hynix, same thing, it's not going to pop up. But if I go back to the developed markets, I am going to see Samsung and SK Hynix as the top two holdings for developed. So, going back to the school of thought, you want to separate those two, right? So if you want to get additional exposures, more so into emerging markets as well, State Street has their version, which is the SPEM. Their holdings are going to be primarily in TSMC, so a Taiwanese-based company, but also Delta Electronics and MediaTek. They've been strong performers internationally, and Tencent and Alibaba has also been included as part of this index as well. So, looking at this as a whole, right? So going into countries as well. So a lot of their space is mostly going to be heavily concentrated into the IT space, as you see here, holding a 32% weight, and then it's the financials. And going into industrials, it's going to be a much smaller portion, which basically most of this is being primarily held just on TSMC alone, right? So going into here, the countries, the heaviest weights is going to be Taiwan, China, India, and a bunch of other countries as well. You're going to see small slivers in Malaysia, Mexico, Thailand. So a lot of emerging markets, right? They're not as strongly scaled as the US and obviously most European nations, and obviously Canada as well. But they do play a great role in terms of the growth of the economy, especially when it comes to diversifying. So if you guys are looking to get additional exposures, this is another great fund to get into. IEMG, this is the BlackRock version of this. This one holds more specifically into South Korea, and if you see here, their top 3 holdings is TSMC, Samsung, and SK Hynix, almost at like a 26% holding. So going into countries for this, Taiwan is going to be one of the biggest holders, South Korea and China and India. So ultimately, it really comes down to what it is that you guys can look into. If you guys need a little bit more to help with the decision-making process, IEMG over the past year has done 42%. Going into this, the performance of this has only done 24%. So it really just depends. Risk tolerance wise, I would say emerging markets is a little bit riskier, but honestly, it's something to be a little bit more bearish on, just because US dollar is slowly getting stronger, but it's not at pre-tariff levels, so they're going to be traded at a much more discounted value in comparison to the US stock market, obviously our version of the S&P 500, along with a bunch of other factors as well, because they are honestly the face globally in terms of the AI race as well. And when you look at developed markets, they don't really have as much into that space. State Street is more if you want to have the inclusion of more standard, healthy, more developed economies, but now includes Samsung and SK Hynix as part of your top holdings. This can be another great strategy to get into. Performance is up 28% for a 1-year performance, and year to date is at just under 15%. So performance doesn't always dictate everything too. It's more of looking at ways to manage your overall portfolio. If you have certain levels of risk tolerance that you want to manage, a combination of both would probably be a bit better. But anyways, kind of wanted to go over some different updates in terms of the landscapes of how emerging markets and developed markets are slowly intertwining and kind of changing into both landscapes. And yeah, I hope this video helps. If you guys have any questions, just drop a comment and let me know. Bye.